Happy Monday, my mathematicians. Today for our math workshop, you're going to need your blue resource folder inside of your anchor binder, your math notebook, your multiple color highlighters, pencil, and a glue stick. Out of your blue folder, remember you are not to take this out of your anchor binder. This is to stay within your anchor binder, but you just need to have it open. On the side, that is the interactive teach pages. Go ahead and very carefully unclip. You're going to take off the first lesson, which says 1.1 place value. Then use your clip to carefully clip your teach pages back together. And then on the right side, use your paper clip and then go ahead and take off the one that says model place value relationships. Put your paper clip back on. Close your blue folder, keeping it inside your anchor binder, and please go ahead and tuck that back in your basket. Then go ahead and open up your math notebook. I'm going to move my flashcards off to the side. And then I'm going to find last week's lesson. So last Thursday, we finished up our geometry unit on line symmetry. So we want to take a look at the pages, turn, making sure I'm not taking more than one page to the next page. We are going to go ahead and write a number 20. You're using a pencil on the left and 21 on the right. We're going to then go ahead and put our teach page on the left side. And then you're going to turn and smooth it down, making sure that there's no creases. When you're done, we're going to go ahead and insert our information into the table of contents. So it's place value to 100 million, so we're going to turn back, and that was page 20. On our table of contents, we remember the number that we're recording is the page number, and then we place the lesson name. So our focus today is to learn and identify the place value to the 100 millions. And this date is 8-31-20. Remember, at any point during our video, you can pause the video to finish following the steps and then push play when you're ready to continue to move on. So let's turn back to where we were. We're going to also start recording the way that our setup is going to be placed so we can have our practice, our example, and then start incorporating our writing about our math lesson. So we're going to set up this side with always 3 labels. We will have at the top where we will practice an example with Mrs. Ling. Then in the middle of the page, this practice is where you will pause the video and try to complete the problem on your own, and then push play again when it's time to check your work. And then in the end, we're going to start talking about how can we write a reflection focused on the lesson for today. So the first few lessons, you're going to follow along with Mrs. Ling, and I'm going to show you the expectation of how we would write about our new skills, and then you will start working on writing your own to show your understanding of the lesson taught. Let's go ahead to the left side. We're going to start at the top where we highlight the title of today's lesson. That way we constantly are reminded what is our focus on our day. So it's place value to the 100 millions. We're going to use this closed notes section to help fill in some of the important words that are going to help us with our mastery of this skill. So the first blank is going to be the word place. So you're going to go ahead and fill in the blank. It says place value is the way that we organize is your second word. Place value is the way that we organize numbers. By organizing numbers, we are able to guarantee that we can, these are the operations we're going to be working on this year. So we're going to add, subtract, multiply, there's a comma, divide, and compare all numbers accurately. Well, in order to have any kind of comparison or use any of our operations within our numbers, we need to understand how is a number created. And that is when we start focusing on place value, because the order in which a number is placed or a digit is placed within that number gives it a value. And that value changes the way the digit is represented. So we're going to start by understanding the different periods within a number in 4th grade. So we're going to start by looking at the first 3 digits that a number can have. And when we talk about our placement of our numbers, we're going to organize these into periods. So we're going to put the word periods at the side. We can also refer to this as houses. So when we think of houses, we think of it has to be separated before you get to your neighbor's house, which is why we have our commas, and the commas are very important in the placement of a number. So the place value period that we have learned in the past, in past years in our grade levels, is what we've referred to as the ones period. You can have it be called the ones period, the hundreds period. Either of those names are correct for this first one. It just depends on how a question is worded. So hundreds or ones period. So that is the name of the 3 places within that period. Then when we turn our notebook to the side, we can give each of those placements its own individual name. So the smallest place value that we will encounter is what we refer to as the ones place. Going up, we use units of 10 to differentiate. So if we use units of 10, the second place value is in the tens place. And oftentimes we will use manipulatives. The ones are then going to be what we call the units. The tens are what you might have used in the past called the rods. And then the next place value, we call this the hundreds place. And this is where you would refer to as a flat. So when we think back about the first period or the smallest value period, we have it called the hundreds or the ones, but within we have each separate section. So we have the ones as the smallest, and then we increase to the tens and increase to the hundreds. Well, when we also want to move up by another unit of 10, meaning we're multiplying by 10, we have to cross the fence to a bigger house. So the next house we're going to highlight with a second color. And this second house or second period of greater value is what we refer to as the thousands period. When we think about the thousands period, we know that these 3 placeholders are always going to be to the left of the first comma between our numbers. So I'm going to rotate my notebook again so I can give it its individual's name. So just like in our first house or first period, the ones period, the first place or the smallest place within the house always names the period again. So we're going to put the word thousands again. So the first place always names the period. Then you'll start seeing a pattern form. The middle place within a period always begins with the word tens. So if we know that the next place starts with the word tens, we have to name the period again. So this place is called the 10,000s. And then the pattern continues with the next placement. So if the biggest place within a period is called the hundreds, we're going to use that same word to identify hundreds, and we then include the period's name. So 100,000s. So when we look back at our placement, we start with the smallest period called the ones place. Within we have 3 different positions. We have our fence or the comma to separate the period. The next greater period is called the thousands, and then we start seeing the pattern start. So we name the period in the first place, which is the smallest of those places. Then we continue by, in the middle, having the word tens, followed by the period's name. And then the largest place within that period has the word hundreds before the period's name. Well, in fourth grade, we don't just stop in the thousands period. We now continue to move on to the millions period. So we're going to go ahead and actually I'm going to use a different color. This time I'm going to use my yellow. So because we're moving from the thousands period, or we call that maybe our little house, we separate the house by a fence, which is another comma to indicate a greater value grouping. So we said the first one, the smallest is the ones, the second largest is the thousands period, and now we're moving on to the millions. So we're going to write millions above the next section. Then we're going to turn our notebook so we can record the names within. So just like we did in the thousands place, the smallest place is always going to rename the period. So we're going to use the word millions. Then, as we did before, a pattern continues. The middle place starts with the word tens to show the second placement, and then we always follow it with the name of the period. So the second placement is tens or 10 millions. I'm going to just cross out the S. Oh, and then we're going to do the last one, which is hundreds, because that's the third placement or the greatest in that period, and followed by the millions. Hundreds, millions, 100 millions. So once again, we're focusing today on learning the 3 periods, and within each of the periods, there is a placement in value. So we start with the smallest, naming the period, then we move on to include the word tens, and then hundreds. We separate periods with our commas. So this is the basis of all of what we're going to be working on in this particular lesson. The next part is looking at a tune that will help you memorize the placement of these spots. So I'm going to put musical notes. You should do the same. This is a reminder that this is a song that we can use to help us sing, and it's to the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. So when you look at this, make sure that you maybe hum that tune, the and then you're going to put the words to it. So it's ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s is the next, then comes millions. So I want you to practice that song a couple times so you can start remembering the order in which our place value increases in value. So in the song, we stop in the millions period, but we know that as fourth graders, we're responsible to know the exact place within that millions period. Now we're going to jump over to the next section, and this is just continuing a pattern of understanding the periods. So we said we knew the smallest periods is the ones, then we move up to the next greatest is the thousands, then we moved up to the millions, but if we continued after millions, we could then know a fourth period after millions would be the word billions, which then would follow the same pattern of adding the word 10 with the name of the period. Then we have 100 with the name of the period. And to go even greater than that, so after millions, we would have billions. And then the last one would be trillions for what we're going to just give us a little preview. We will not be working in the billions or the trillions, but this is just a little preview that no matter what period we're focusing on, the pattern continues with how we would give it its name. So go ahead and put the rest of those names in there. Remember to push pause if you need to catch up. The next section is after we understand there are names for the place values, is to then understand the difference between when you're asked to know the value of a number or to identify the digit. So we're going to start by looking at the word value and understanding what that means as a question. So I'm going to ask you to highlight it and then point to the side. We're going to understand that anytime you see the word value by itself, that means they're asking you how much is the number, and I'm going to just put the symbol for number worth. And that word worth is the most important. So I'm going to underline it, and then I'm even going to use my yellow to highlight it. Because anytime I think of the word value, I think of the word worth. Worth means like if I put some money to it, how much would I receive if I'm referring to the value? So this is one type of question we might be asking ourselves, and we'll talk about some examples in just a minute. But if I see the word digit instead, and they ask me what is the digit, I need to know what they're really asking me to identify. So I'm going to highlight this one, and to the opposite side, I'm going to remember digit means what is the name of the number, not the placement of the number. So placement would be talking about place value. Digit is just telling me the name of the number. So for example, the number 4. If they ask me what the digit is, I would say 4. Or if they said, what is the digit, and they gave me maybe this 6 by itself, I would say 6. So it's just naming of the number when they're referring to digit. So we're going to do some practice. So we're going to color code. So when it says, what is the value? I'm going to highlight with my same color and say, what is the value of the 7 in the number that they've given me? So the 7 is in the second placement in the second period. So I need to remember that value means it keeps the same digit, but then everything to the right of it turns into a 0. So the 7 in the 10,000s place is really a 70,000. When we look at the next question is what digit, so I'm going to use my pink this time, just remind myself it's a different question. What digit is in the hundreds place? So I look at the hundreds position and I use my chart at the top. If I forget, that's the 3rd spot in the first period. The digit is an 8, not the value. It's not asking me the name of the place value. It's just asking the digit's name. So we're going to continue with our practice. What digit is in the millions place? So I can look at my place value. Remember, it's this spot, so I could even count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I can count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The digit is a 5. Moving to the next side, it says what value, so I remember value means worth, of the number 4. So I look at my number 4, and then I place the same number down, but then I count how many spots there are to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That means I have 7 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But importantly, I have to put those breaks or the commas back between the periods. So I count from the right to the left, and I count over 3. 1, 2, 3, comma, 1, 2, 3, comma. The value is 40 million. The next one is asking what is the digit in the 100 millions. So if I look over here, 100 millions is in the 369th space. So this is the digit, so I would put a 3. The next one is what is the value? So I once again highlight. The value of the 1 is in the thousands place, so I put the 1, count over 1, 2, 3 spots, so I have 1, 2, 3 zeros, and then I count 1, 2, 3, put my comma to break the periods. The next section is asking for the different question to be answered. So we aren't asking about value or digit anymore. We're going back up to place value. So I'm using a different color right here, the place value. Place value is actually a word that we are going to use to answer. So what place value is the 6 in? So I look at the same example of numbers. The 6 is the first spot. So I look at the word for this place, and I use that as the answer. The second question is still asking me about place value. So remember, when it has 2 words, place value, it means a word. Is the 3 in? So I look at my 3. It's in the very last spot of the 3rd section or the 3rd period. That's my 100 millions, so I use the word 100 millions. So place value means a word, and I'm going to just record that as a reminder. So word. Value means worth or how much money you would receive. Digit means the name of a number. Then we can go down and continue working. So this is a section you can pause, then you can push play to check your work. So the first one is value of the 5. This would have given me the 5 in the last position in the second period. So this is 500,000. The next one is digit. So I know that digit means the name of the number in the hundreds place. So that is the digit is a 9. Digit in the millions place. So that means name that's in the millions, and that's a 0. Place value is asking me a word. So what is the word, or what is the name of the 3? So the 3 is right in this second place in the third period. So that tells me it's the 10 million. The next section, we have value again of the 4. So value, the 4 is in the middle of the second period. So that is 40,000. We then have what digit is in the 100 millions. So we look at our number, 100 millions is the very last one. Digit means just the number, so I put a 2. What is the value? So we are switching back to the worth again. Of the 1, well, there's no 1, so we're going to actually change that to be an 8. What is the value of the 8? And that 8 is in the tens place, so 8 tens is an 80. And then the last one is place value again. Place value means word of the where the 7 is located, and that is in the ones place. So we have been able to use our chart to help remember the names within a place value, the differentiated periods, and how the pattern is set up to give its name. And then the last section we learned the difference between when they're asking us the worth, digit, and how to identify the place value. So now we're going to jump over to the example, and we're going to do one practice problem. So we're going to put a number 1, and we're going to put the question that is similar to what we just saw, is what is the value of the 8 in the number 377,787,517. So when we look at a large number like this, we need to also learn how to say the number correctly. So we would start by saying 300, because that's the place, the name, 375 million. We don't say the name of the period until the comma. 487,517. So we will also talk about how we group numbers together when we say, instead of saying 370 and then putting 5 separately, we put that 75 together like they're holding hands. So we'll talk about that in the next couple days. What is the value of the 8? So value, we should remind ourselves, that means what is it worth? So if it's the 8, I'm going to underline where the 8 is, and remember that I put the 8 recorded in my answer, and everything to the right is going to turn into a 0. So I'm going to put a 0, comma, 0, 0, 0. So my answer is 80,000. For the practice, you're going to do this one on your own. So once we've written the once we've written the question, please pause your video, answer it, and then come back. So this question is, what is the digit in the 10 millions place? So we're still going to use the same number that we used in the original. What is the digit in the 10 millions place? So look back at your number that we used originally, find the 10 millions place, and then you're going to record the digit. Pause the video, try to answer it, and then you can come back and check your work. The 10 millions place, we need to look at our chart on the left. The 10 millions is going to be in the third period, middle position. So if I look at the first period, second period, third period, the middle position is a 7. The last part is where we're going to record a written account of what we've learned today. So that way we can understand what the focus of our lesson was. So we're going to then be able to use those stems that we glued in a couple weeks ago back on page 3. These are going to help us get started with recording our learning and our thinking. Oftentimes, I personally like to use the one showing the sequence of steps, because that way I can remind myself when I'm doing my classwork, what did Mrs. Ling say was the first step? What came next? Then came after that, and so on. So we're going to use something about sequence for this first example. So we're going to start by writing first. And anytime we put a transitional word or a sequential word, we put a comma, just to differentiate between the sequential word and then the rest of the statement. First, I found the key word in the question, and highlighted it. So when I'm writing my sequential steps, I'm thinking back about when I use my problem solving of our examples. So first, when we read a question, we highlighted a key word. That tells me my intention for solving. Then, comma, I looked for what the key word meant. So once I've highlighted it, I can look back at my teach page to say, okay, well, if it was value, it meant worth. If it was digit, it means name. Place value means it's actually a word. So then, we just said then, now we're going to use next, comma. I found the place in the number I needed, and then I'm going to put finally, comma, I answered the question. So this is just a reflection of how I solved a problem. That way, when I'm doing my classwork, I can be reminded of the steps in order to solve correctly. Make sure that you have your classwork out, you have your teach page open when you're solving, so you know exactly what Mrs. Ling's asking you to do to solve. Today's classwork is your paper that says lesson 1.1, so write classwork at the top. Once again, you are going to work on even numbers only. So you're going to circle on the front 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and then on the back 2, 4, and 6. When you're looking at this middle section, it's asking you to make some comparisons. This is just going to be a bonus because this is something we're going to talk in lots of detail about in the future. So this is not something that was taught in this lesson, but this is a bonus to see if you have any idea how to show a comparison. Remember that in the beginning I said how place value is created by units of 10. When you get to this section in asking about the comparison, how many times bigger, you're going to use the values of either 10, 100, 1,000, and so on. This is not to be focused on. If you get stumped, I want you to give this a good try, but this is something we will learn explicitly in a lesson down the road. Remember to take a picture of your 2 notebook pages and then both sides of your classwork, and we will review your classwork tomorrow morning meeting.